To meet the demands of the growing lighter-than-air force, the task of training pilots, crews, and maintenance personnel was divided between East and West Coast. Goodyear Field representatives supervised the creation of airships on the West Coast. Some 22 airships were used to instruct cadets in the fine art of navigating an advanced motorized balloon in the wind. Some enlisted men advanced from blimp crew to pilot in the expanded training program. World War I instructor Jack Botner took charge of training a new generation of blimp pilots. Former rigid airshipman and submariner Captain Don Mackey took command of Moffett, now designated the primary training site. Mechanics, electricians, and riggers received classroom instruction and on-the-job training. Early on, the only available training manuals still taught rigid airship fundamentals, even though ZR-3 was no longer a training ship. Moffett instructors developed their own training courses and manuals. Once there were competent pilots, experienced mechanics, and trained riggers, there was precious little time to train a blimp crew together as a fighting unit. Singer Bing Crosby leased property near his Del Mar racetrack to the Navy for $1. Working with American subs out of San Diego, K-ship crews gained experience with real submarine contacts. Lakehurst provided advanced training. In the new G-ships and older K-ships, students practiced dropping ordnance on U-boat mock-ups in the pine scrubs. Later, training was conducted in the deep waters off Key West using World War I American and Free French submarine. With the arrival of King 41, a new station filled the southeast gap as ZP-15 began operating at the Georgia station named for Glenn County, Glynco. As more King ships came into service, advanced bases with only basic facilities were established between hangar locations. The many expeditionary sites, manned by squadron detachments, offered further flexibility, helping close the gaps in what would become known as the helium umbrella. ZP-32 set the detachment halfway to Tillamook at foggy Eureka, California. The 47 King ship was set up right where the first Japanese sub had attacked. One morning, K-47 left Eureka for a routine patrol. Radioman Simon Beatty got a mad signature before the airship was ready to head out of Trinidad Inlet. Pilot Peter Ace Culbertson attacked with K-47 depth charges. After a few hours, another King relieved them and bombed the now stationary contact. That evening, witnesses reported diesel odor and debris washing ashore, and the men of ZP-32 detachment were sure they had bagged a pig boat. But there was no mention of the action when 47, piloted by skipper R.E. Bly, gave Navy Secretary Knox a tour of San Francisco Bay. As the K numbers passed 50, it became possible to extend the airship coverage into the Gulf of Mexico. King 53 came to Houma, Louisiana to start ZP-22. K-54 was named Jean Lafitte when ZP-22 crews assigned their ships pirate names to patrol the Mississippi Delta area. Further west, Hitchcock, Texas, gave a home to ZP-24 as Kingship 60 and Kingship 62 arrived. 24's blimp crews ranged south to the Rio Grande using a mass base at Brownsville. Now the Nazi subs were in the warm waters of the Caribbean using Nazi-sympathizing Vichy French islanders for fresh food and even fuel. In answer, ZP-23 was formed at Hitchcock, headed south and established headquarters at Vernon Field, Jamaica, sharing a field with U.S. Army bombers. ZP-23 airships also covered southern Central America with help from ZP-21 blimps looked for both German and Japanese submarines from stick masts near the vital Panama Canal. To pursue the raiders even further south, King ships were deployed to the South American continent. ZP-51 was activated in the British West Indies. Another 1,000-foot-long hangar was planned for headquarters on vital Trinidad. Instead of waiting, the 80th Navy Negro Construction Battalion was employed to re-erect the old Brooks Field Army blimp hangar that had been disassembled and moved in from Texas. It was the first time Eleanor Roosevelt visited an LTA facility. Charleston Field became home to Airship Wing 5. Care had to be taken to avoid overflying neutral Venezuela when patrolling in the Trinidad area for fear of internment. Spreading coverage into South America, ZP-51 established Detachment 2 at Hindenburg Field, British Guiana, alongside Army bombers, taking care not to overfly German sympathizing French Guiana. Detachment 3 set up at Paramaribo Field, Dutch Guiana. Soon blimps were guiding vessels around shoals and protecting shipments of war-critical bauxite ore needed for aluminum production. Now U-boats spotted blimps in the Caribbean.
11:43 hours. Dived on seeing airship take off with riding lights on. Was bombed by the airship while at periscope deck.
On 26 April, K-45 dropped its ordnance on magnetic contacts and scanned for results. Suddenly a U-boat surfaced directly aft. With bombs expended, K-45 could only call for help. But in the 7 hours it took for a destroyer to arrive, the Nazis escaped.
1:20 hours. Havana in sight. At Zeppelin of starboard bow. It turns and has inductive detectors. We need our 3.7 centimeter gun very much right now.
The summer of 1943 saw a record number of Nazi subs sunk by surface and air units as new listening stations were able to detect U-boat transmissions. The commander of Fleet Airships Atlantic, now Commodore George H. Mills, urged his crews to be more aggressive. No blimp had been credited with a sub kill because diving teams were not available to verify action against submerged targets. Likewise, workers building K-ship cars rarely received the satisfaction of seeing their handiwork roar off and do battle with the enemy. On Independence Day, 1943, Goodyear workers assembled outside the Airdock for a morale-boosting ceremony. Lieutenant Joy Hancock of the Waves, herself twice widowed by the rigid airship program, was on hand to christen brand-new K-74. As the new blimp joined ZP-21 at Richmond, Florida, their cheering send-off proved to be strangely ironic. It was that morale builder, K-74, that got a radar contact on the night of 18 July. Command pilot Nelson Grills ordered battle stations. Radioing for support was fruitless. K-74 tried to remain up-moon as she approached the contact. Soon the blimp crew could see U-134 heading right for two merchant vessels coming down the shipping lane. Crewman Eckhart opened fire with a 50 caliber machine gun. Passing over the radar, Ordnanceman Stessel pulled the bombing levers. It's not known if the bombs exploded at the 50-foot settings, but U-134 was one of the first subs to be heavily armed against their attacks. Its 20-millimeter guns riddled the blimp, flaming an engine.
Attacked at night by a Navy airship with bombs and cannon. Main ballast tank 5, quick diving tank on starboard side damaged.
K-74 settled into the water and crew abandoned ship. K-74's attack so damaged the radar that it was unable to submerge. Limping home, it was sunk by a bomber. But Stessel was lost to a shark attack before K-74's crew was rescued. In October, K-94, flying off Puerto Rico, seemed to be in mortal danger, and the B-25 was sent out to investigate. Both the blimp and the bomber went down in flames with all hands. If the U-518 in the area at the time was victorious, it did not survive to tell the tale. U-boats were soon equipped with radar detectors. Many times a blimp's number one electrician would report a radar contact, only to have it quickly disappear. Always searching for more unprotected targets, U-boats had been raiding below the equator. ZP-41 was established to pursue the Nazi South. Former Goodyear pilots R.H. Hobensack and Preston Dixon leapfrogged 5 countries, and on 26 September, their King 84 became the first non-rigid airship to cross the equator. It had taken 98 hours to fly 4,430 miles by chart and dead reckoning. K-88 and others soon followed. ZP-41 set up shop in São Luís, Brazil, established bases at Amapá, Igarapé-Açu, and Fortaleza. Crews at remote mast sites had so mastered the art of keeping the blimps in the air with minimal facilities, another 1,000-foot hangar laid down in northern Brazil was canceled. The U-boats attacked even further south, and ZP-42 was created at Maceió, Brazil. Flying down to Rio, K-90 and others patrolled out of Ipitanga, Caravelas, and Victoria. Blimps became familiar sights to the girls on Ipanema Beach. In the distant south, tables were turned on the Germans as U.S. airshipmen commandeered the giant hangar at Santa Cruz that had once housed the Graf Zeppelin and the Hindenburg. Using ladders and equipment that once maintained the giant rigid airships, ZP-42 created the Navy's southernmost airship overhaul and repair facilities, sharing the hangar with Brazilian allies. Crews were told to avoid nearby Argentina. Duty with the ZP squadron was something like ordinary aviation duty. Former sports heroes, then in uniform, might sign autographs. USO shows occasionally made it out to the remote sites. When the movie star visited Brazil, the K-100 was dubbed Alona Massey. Her husband served in ZP-51. Crewmen stood round-the-clock pressure watches to verify envelope fullness as the barometer rose and fell. If not blessed with a hangar's fan and air duct systems, a gasoline blower would be hung outside to maintain air pressure. But no matter how long the crews worked, the squadron could be awakened at any hour to ground-handle an airship. Most every base had a mascot, often a mongrel dog. Keen to the sound of running engines, some dogs would run out and catch the blimps lying in their teeth. Local civilians were often employed, and locals were often beneficiaries of off-the-record blimp services, from spotting schools of fish to ambulance service. Pilots experimented with increasingly heavy takeoff weights, squeezing out more endurance for patrol and escort. The U-boat attacks dropped off as airship missions increased. Rough weather could toss the big blimps around like small boats in heavy seas. The smell of gasoline and rubber permeated everything. The noise level was high, so off-duty crew heading aft could use the head, but found no quiet to enjoy rest in the bunk or seats. The small galley allowed crewmen to double as cooks. At some stations, the chow was not too bad. Keeping overgrown motorized balloons in fighting trim was not much like turning wrenches on an airplane. Work stands were rigged to permit engine repairs while blimps swung at their masts. The fabric gas bags were occasionally punctured, but sometimes it took heroic measures to save a ship impaled or wind slammed against a hangar. Occasionally, even the low and slow-flying blimps, which kept a schedule even when birds were grounded, would slam into a fog-shrouded obstruction. The big bag absorbed many impacts that would obliterate an airplane. Accident summaries showed an above-average safety record. Without realizing, blimps listed as wrecked would usually be repaired to fly another day. Powered by high-octane gasoline, the ever-present danger of fire waited for lapses in proper procedure to claim an airship. When static electricity or improper fuel dumping started a fire, even 400,000 cubic feet of helium wouldn't smother it. Some sailors lost their lives in this way. Fire hoses were used to snow off of blimps at frigid sites. An airship could be damaged by the weight of tons of ice accumulating on the bags and fins. Sometimes dragging a line across the top of the bag would not loosen the ice. Many a freezing night found gallant sailors fighting Mother Nature for their ships. Conversely, in the tropics, fire hoses were used to cool the superheated bags to prevent their overpressurized helium from being wasted through safety valves. With airships deployed over many climates, Mother Nature was occasionally successful in overturning a mast or plucking a K-ship off its moorings. The giant hangars offered hurricane refuge for local airplanes. One tremendous storm blew over Louisiana into the Gulf, where it drove one of ZP-22 patrol ships above pressure height and then dropped it into the drink. One by one, its crew drowned in the heavy seas. Only Ensign Feast was rescued. Back at home base Homer, strong winds managed to jam one door partially open. Eventually, the pounding winds pried open the other end, ripping 3 blimps loose. The K-56, 57, and 62 were wrecked when bombs exploded. Power lines were struck and fuel ignited. In the South, blimp squadrons, or blimprons, were challenged by the corrosive effects of the tropics. Patches came unglued and balsa wood nose battens disintegrated. The K-56 was lost when its upper fin brace rotted off in flight, but a gentle landing allowed her crew to escape. Goodyear and Navy engineers responded with improved patching, metal nose battens, and anti-corrosion techniques. As flying hours increased, wear and tear on the hardy craft found squadron crews flying by day and maintaining their ship by night. A major reorganization brought welcome relief by creating headquarters squadrons, or hedrons, which took on the major maintenance duty. Since more overhauls required more hangars, several stations were expanded. NAS Richmond became master of the South Atlantic, receiving a third 1,000-foot-long hangar. The increasingly complex K-ships could not lift full military loads in the muggy Amazon conditions, where pressure height was as little as 100 feet. An improved 456,000 cubic foot envelope was developed. But the 1936 design was just about stuffed full of equipment and weaponry. After a year and a half of war, there had been enough time to create a modern pressure ship. By fall, veteran airship designer Carl Arnstein's masterpiece, the M-ship, was taking shape where the flying carrier USS Akron had been built. The Mighty Mike was a modern, innovative design, spreading its load more evenly along its 300-foot envelope. The 117-foot-long car consisted of 3 flexing sections. The 625,000 cubic foot M1 was rolled out in October. On Navy Day, 1943, the M1 was christened by Mrs. Jean Rosendahl. The Mike's 625,000 cubic feet of helium could lift enough gasoline to carry 8 depth bombs to mid-Atlantic. The Navy had ordered 22 of these most capable craft. However, U-boat proponent Donitz now commanded the entire German Navy, which employed bigger and tougher submarines. Equipped with the new snorkel device, the sub could run its diesels while submerged. These new German boats were heavily armed against aircraft, and some would shoot down more planes than torpedo ships. But the U.S. Navy now operated the largest fleet of helium-borne vehicles in history. There were 5 airship groups, called wings for lack of a better term, each under the command of a captain or commodore. There were 15 operational squadrons with 6 to 12 airships each, performing a variety of missions around the clock. The 10 major hangar bases were supplemented by more than 24 mast sites operating patrol and rescue coverage spanning 3 million square miles. Americans had endured 2 years of war, and Navy lighter than air was at last at full strength.